Good morning. This morning, we start our budget meetings for Town Council, and I officially call the meeting to order. Mr. Kelly, do you want to get us started?
Thank you very much. Today, we're going to start the budget process. We've been meeting with department heads, working out their proposals and staff's proposals to bring forward to you. We've also taken items that we've heard discussed by council and incorporated those into the budget for consideration. We have a 3-year capital plan that we adopted a few years ago, probably 3 years ago is the first year that we put this in play. It's the blue book that's in front of you. That'll be the first thing that we're going to go through sort of to let you know what it is and what it pertains to. Each department submits a request. They provide the information needed to get the request through, and then we put everything onto a form and submit to council for their review. But additional backup is available if you want some additional information as we go forward. Councilman Kraft had asked for the total number of vehicles and things like that. I started counting this morning, but then I said, well, as we go through it, I'll give you a running tally. You'll see everything in front of you. It's going to have the fire trucks, pickup trucks, police cars, backhoes, dump trucks, lawnmowers. Everything's included in the document. Also, what we started doing, we started including the additional personnel. Excuse me. And so that would be the very first sheet that you see in the document you have in front of you today. Each department is listed. You'll see the number of the department. You'll see the salaries. You'll see the benefits. And then you'll see totals. Everything we do is itemized within departments, within general fund, and then within each enterprise fund going forward. Some departments have asked for items, and you may see a few items or positions sort of a line through them saying we're not asking for those. And then the police department, we've been working with the new chief and also with Frankie, the assistant chief cook, on what was going to be proposed on their side. Police and fire is usually the first meeting, but since the chief just started Monday, we moved him to next week to give him some time to be able to review the budget process. So we have today fire, recreation, and 801 Pier Complex. So those will be the ones we're reviewing today. But as you can see, the additional personnel, as you know, that we have 3 vacancies, and as we go through each department, we'll also tell you what's still vacant and what's been filled. So you'll see that. He's wanting to do some reorganizations within the department. He was already talking about that when we did the interview process. So we'll go into more detail about the police department next week when he's here. The next one you see is fire department. Chris will be here today to talk about those. We talked about this earlier during the process about the bringing in 3 paramedics so we can have 1 on each shift at Station 1. So then the call volumes and things would change. We'd have be able to respond to a medical call and then being able to respond to a fire or an additional medical call without having to bring staff from Station 3 over to the island and then having to call for a mutual aid to back up the other end as we had to bring people towards Station 1. Chris will go over that, but you'll see the 3 new positions, salary and the benefit cost. Building inspections, you'll see a permit specialist 2. That is to help with getting the building permits issued and getting them out the door. The questions have been raised about the length of time that a person applies for a building permit and how long it's taking to get the process completed. So we had Steve analyze what was needed for that. And then we bring in that position, but Steve will go over that. You see 540 and now 541. As we had discussed, we have separated that department. Development services is no longer development services. It'll be broken down into building inspections and then the planning department. If you think another catchy names to be for building inspector, you'd like to have it called whatever you would like to call it, we can change that at any time. But we put building inspections there to sort of identify what we were doing. We're still working that out with Steve, and we've been talking with Wes about that as well. Update on the planner position. Wes and Debbie should have the finalized advertisement going out today. The COG is helping us look for a planner as well. We have them doing that for us. And hopefully we have some interviews set up here pretty soon with some people that they're referencing for us.
If I can jump in real fast, Mr. Kelly. Zoning technician for the planning department, that is a position, that's not the head person.
That is right. Yep.
And
That's where we're getting to next. We started looking at the complaints coming in, the case loads, and you see those in your monthly reports. And you see that we're not getting the ratio covered that we need to be getting covered, so we're not stacking up cases, and we can be able to respond to the public in a little faster process. So we started looking at bringing another zoning technician on as well, as Councilman Kraft just mentioned. Public Works Streets, we talked about the need for alleyways, maintaining the gravel roads and getting those accesses up because we're starting to have traffic. As Mr. Hatton put it the other day with the funds that are coming in, it shows that people are here year-round now instead of just here for the summer months. So we need to be able to maintain on a constant basis these alleyways, roadways, and parking. Public Works Operations Division, the two positions there, that's going to come up in the discussion. Right now we have a contract with a provider to provide grass cutting, weed eating, mulching, pruning, weeding, and all that in our town facilities. Public Works been looking at it, and they believe that they can make a proposal as well to come in and take that back over for Town Hall, Rec Department, and Middleton Park, both of them, and be able to provide a little bit better and more personal service and a daily service to keep those looking better for the town. So you'll hear about that as we go through that department.
Is that a comparable rate?
Well, when you look at it, you hear somebody say, oh, we're saving $75,000. But we're not saving $75,000 because you got to add the personnel and you got to uniforms,
Salary benefits?
and all those kind of things. It comes to probably about a $24,000 gain.
Okay.
But you'll hear about that one
Okay.
when we go in that department. But those are the general fund totals. And then we go to the enterprise funds. You've heard about the number of constructions, the water taps, and you can see what we're doing on the monthly reports on those. So we're asking for one person for water and one person for wastewater. As the number of services and everything keep increasing, the maintenance and stuff on the system is increasing as well. So we have to have more people to be able to provide the maintenance because they can't get to everything that they need to get to in a timely manner. So you'll see the utility enterprise fund total. Stormwater. We looked at trying to create a secondary crew to assist with stormwater. I don't think we're there yet. In talking with Rick, we've determined that we're not there yet. We should have we interviewed last week. We're making offers to the last two positions today or tomorrow. So all those positions in stormwater will be filled, and then public works will be filled. So all those vacancies now will be having bodies in them.
So the ones that are crossed out here are the ones that are,
Yes.
that you're not considering this year? Okay.
So the ones that have the line, those are the ones we talked with Rick. We asked him what would be needed to start with. And I said, I don't need the plan review and inspector if I don't have somebody actually doing field work. I don't need more people at the top. I need people working in the field.
Right.
So then we looked at what we needed, and the equipment operator and the heavy equipment operator was the two positions that we decided to bring forward. But that, again, that's in the enterprise fund.
So, Mr. Keller, before we go further here, per the mayor's question, so on this sheet, I'm looking at, back of the envelope math here, over $800,000 worth of new positions. And your sheet reflects two that you have removed. Were there other cuts that were made before this list was created?
The other one was in police, we had 4 positions that we had discussed prior to bringing the new chief in. So we had took that one of those off anyway and just left it to 3.
What I'm getting at is this is feeling like a wish list. I'm not sure that the typical editing that you have done in the past was in play this time. How many positions were removed from this presentation? I see 2.
So what we have done, this time was totally different than we had because we didn't get to discuss this during the retreat. So everything that we have now is items that council as discussed in open meetings, it says, yes, we need to look at adding this, we need to look at that. So this is some of the items that have been brought forth by council, just talking and suggestions. The ones that I think all of them are needed to continue the service that we currently have. We have been understaffed. And so all the ones that are in front of you are items that staff has looked at and staff is bringing forward.
So I want to stay on the macro picture here before we get into these individual departments. So at some point, this list is going to have to be prioritized unless we're buying the farm, unless we're buying everything because everybody needs more people, which seems to me is not a very good fiduciary strategy, just to give you my perspective on it. I don't think we should be doing that. I think these things should be prioritized based on need, based on impact, and then council can wrestle with the question of how much can we afford and in what year, rather than here's a list of everything we'd like to have. Well, okay, fine. The other point I want to make, because we're talking about public service here, and one of the things that we hear a lot, I'm sure it's exaggerated for impact, is, I've called town hall, I can't get an answer. I've emailed so-and-so 45 times. So one thing I would like us to do is conduct some kind of an examination of our response systems and see if they can be made more effective. For example, are all phone calls returned within 24 hours? Emails? What's the volume of calls we're getting, and to what department? Again, what's the email map look like, and how do we make it more efficient? And it may be that we don't need more people to do that, we simply need better systems. I don't think we know, but I'm sure my colleagues have heard the same thing. People are frustrated when they can't make contact. So I would urge you to take a look at that, see how that's working, and to see, maybe we need more employees on that end of the system, although I think it's probably just better technology would help us. So, a thought.
I know in 3 departments, in customer service, building inspections, water, and public works, they keep tally sheets.
Yeah, so does Heather. I look at her tally sheets every month. So I know how many contacts they've had on the internet.
So they keep a tally sheet of all the calls, and then they keep a callback tally as well. So some of that information we could give to you.
We do the same thing in customer service downstairs.
Okay.
We have the number of phone calls, the number of people that they've taken care of that day, and then, of course, the emails, we have those records.
Bravo. I'd like to see those because I'd like to have that ammunition when people complain. I'd like to say, well, in fact, last year we fielded, making this up, 250,000 calls to public service, and they were answered, and here they are, I've got the logs. Because that's not the public perception, I can tell you that.
Well, you're asking for each department. Each department, all these are on one sheet of paper, but each department had their own needs within their department. And when we go through the departments, those will be more addressed. But it's really, we provide a service, like you said. If we want to keep it where it takes 5 to 6 or 3 to 5 months to get a building permit, then we don't bring a building permit. We just leave it 3 to 5 months. But that's the phone calls and questions that we get from people saying we need to speed this up or we need to provide a better service. I can't provide a better service with the people that we have.
Yeah, I understand that. And I caught the subtlety of your initial point. Typically in the past, the cut decisions on a lot of these things would have been made in the retreat, but the retreat was changed this year, be more of a conceptual retreat. So we're actually doing it now. That's why I'm reacting to this wish list the way I am. It's like, whoa.
Understand.
Hold on.
But I just wanted to get this sheet in front of you so that you'll see what's inside. So you'll already know before we get to that part. So you'll know what to be looking at or asking questions for.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate seeing all of this itemized in one document when, not having done this before, I apologize, but once we get inside, we'll be able to have the conversation that if this, what are the benefits of, basically the impact, what the benefits of filling this position, what increased capacity would we be able to have? What are the risks then of not filling this position? Because I think it needs to be weighed on something other than dollars and cents, or in addition to dollars and cents.
So hopefully we'll be able to work through that today. I know we're using Chris as a guinea pig, but Chris has the positions here on this piece of paper. So we'll be able to see how that goes. And then we'll know how the new council is addressing things, and then we can work things out going forward. But really, this was our first meeting that we're having to be able to ask Councilman Martin, Councilman Blaylock, and you, Mayor, about budget items and sort of tell you how the budget process we've been using.
Right.
And then sort of where we can go from here.
Thank you for that explanation.
As we're going through it, as the new guy here, as we're going through it, will I see, like Chief DeSelmo, when he asked for something this year, what percentage of an increase that is from his budget from last year?
As soon as we get into that part, you're going to have all that in front of you. So then the next page that you have in your book, this is where we get into the equipment, rolling stock inventory, vehicles, and those kind of things. So we color code everything that we're doing in the to try to make it simpler. You'll see equipment and rolling stock this year, what we're looking at. You'll see a total. You get down to the 21 XTS 2500 portable radios. We're replacing 21 of those. Chris will go into more detail, but in 2025, the radios that we currently have will be no longer serviced. So we've been talking about this for the last 2 to 3 years about buying radios. We can purchase these with the ARP money. So that's one of the things we'll be looking to take that out of the taxes, and you'll see that when we go through the budget. But if you look at that, you'll see green, I don't know what really that next color is, orange, and then sort of yellow. But you'll see lines drawn through the portable radios. There was $48,000 a year put in through that, but to go ahead and buy them this year with the ARP, you'll see that that was taken off. So that's sort of what you see and how things are laid out, and you see when items are purchased. We try to do this because these are items that Chris will be having to put in front of y'all every year to be replaced. Some of these are absorbed within the budget in different sections, and you'll see these numbers. Some will be capital items, some will be expenditure items, but you'll see that going through. But we list the most common items that Chris has to go through that are larger dollar items, so you can keep track of what we're doing. And then you turn the page and you'll see the fleet rolling stock inventory. These are the trucks. Chris is going to talk about that. Things changed. Yesterday we had our fire meeting, and then yesterday afternoon, Chris got a call from Myrtle Beach to discuss the fire trucks, and we'll let him give that update here in a minute, but they're not going to be giving us any fire trucks this year, so we're going to Plan B. But you see what we're looking at. E1 platform needs to be replaced. Then the Predator 171, Predator 173, and you see the prices for those. Then you see the new EMS QRV 183. So when you see a new item that's associated with new staff, so if we don't get that staff, then that item will not be purchased either. And then, so those kind of things as we go through the budget, when you see new, is going to be associated with an employee, except when it gets to, you'll see a mower in public utilities. That's a new mower to take care of the acreage, but we'll identify that later. Then 23, 24, you see a new addition, Station Pine Forest. It may be Williamson track, whatever it's going to be. We just started putting some monies out there because there's going to be an expenditure at some time. But we will need a platform truck at that point for the mainland side as well. So that's sort of how we lay out a 3-year plan. It's a moving kind of thing. Something may break that was supposed to be next year or the year after that, so we'll bring that to y'all. And so if you look at last year's 3-year plan, it may have something online that said we're going to buy 2 trucks and now we're buying 1 or something like that. But it is an ever-revolving thing that we bring forward as best we can to describe what's happening in a 3-year period. So then the next item you get to in the 3-year plan is the recreation. You see their equipment, you see their fleet, and you see that Heather's wanting, yes, to replace the R8 Ford Ranger, 67,000 miles, 2005. Rust bucket is sometimes what it's called, but you'll see what we're doing, and so you can track it that way, but we'll go through these in each department as well. Then you get to the rolling inventory on hers. We started this 2 years ago in the rec department just to try to keep up with all the equipment, because we kept receiving calls saying the bike's broke, the treadmill ain't working, and blah, blah, blah. And it was hard for me and Mr. Hatton to come up with the item list of what was broken, what was running. So then we had this made so we could start tracking and start replacing equipment as needed. So you see everything, you'll see cardio, you'll see weight room, and then other items, kayaks and those things. And then on the next page, you'll see what the replacement is for those. And we have it laid out over a 3-year period. And then Heather looks at, just make sure that the way she lays things out, hopefully the equipment can last for those 3 years as we had planned.
Are there standards for the recreational equipment for the weight room, et cetera? So similar, I guess, to fire trucks, that we begin to replace them where we still might recoup some money and prior to failure. You know, the whole Disney concept is they replace light bulbs before they actually go out. It's just a routine maintenance from one end of the park to the other. So where we might begin to replace things before they fail to keep everything moving. Are there life cycles for equipment like that?
We haven't ever utilized anything like that. We can ask Heather that when she comes up here on her section to see.
Just curious.
Mr. Kelly and I developed this recreation inventory, and we went down, actually did the inventory down there sometime last year and get in the serial numbers and everything, because we were just getting a hodgepodge.
Right.
We couldn't tell anything, so we went down and
This is
got our
excellent.
numbers on it.
Excellent list. Thank you.
Then we get to the community center, and you'll see every department has their own equipment and fleet. So you'll see the Crown Victorian that she inherited from the police department many years ago. It's time to let it go to rest. And the Ford Transit Connect is basically a van that would come in and replace that. But you see the price for that. And then you see where she's wanting to add some bikes to give another location. The seniors are there. Instead of just having them sitting in chairs, give them something that they can do as well. So you see those items added to the list. And that's all the capital, that's the 3-year plan that's in front of you today. And like I said, when we go through each department, you'll get new sheets, and then eventually the little blue thing turns into an actual book. And then each section, each department, you'll be able to go through and keep up with what has been discussed and what needs to be discussed. So you look through it and say, well, why didn't you replace this item? We can go back and then explain what that item was, or things like that going forward.
And with the new fire trucks that you see there, 22, 23, Chris has done a real good job on marketing the trucks that we take out of service. We've sold pretty much every one of them that's taken out. Of course, not for this new cost, but it offsets the cost of it, which helps.
On the, thank you, that's a lot of information. Next time somebody says, what all they've been doing all day long, I think I know now. Thank you very much. You said that radios would come out of the ARP money. Is that out of the January ARP money, or is that out of the June ARP money?
Doesn't matter. Hopefully we get the other check in June. Once council agrees that that's the expenditure that we're going to do, then we'll advertise for the bids for those and then get those awarded. Probably won't award it until July, but that's what we're looking at.
But most of the January ARP money went to stormwater, for the most part.
Yes, sir, it was all earmarked for that account. But it can always, it's a fluid thing that could come out of that account and go to something else. And we're going to during this process, we'll come to you with some new ideas and new regulations that continue to change on what you can and can't do with that money and how you can utilize that money. We had a ruling the other day, and we went to the manager's meeting last week, and the new thing is to take the money and utilize it to pay back payroll. You have all the documentation and all the records, timesheets, vacation slips, checks, It's an easier item to document. So that everybody is going back to July 1st of this current budget year and paying back the general fund, so then you have that $1.2 million to be able to utilize as you see fit within the budget.
Without being questioned so strictly.
That's right. Because right now, if you do, we discussed a few things. The way it is now, it'd be a federal project. So you have to do federal procurement. Federal procurement adds extensive cost and monitoring and documentation to everything that you do. Leland did a greenway, did a small little greenway that went up $2.1 million because they had to do it a certain way. So they're the ones who, this last ruling was only about 30 days ago, came out to say this is the final interpretation and now you can use it for payroll. So the COG is, a person to come down from the COG to talk to us to make sure that how we do it, how it's laid out, and make sure we do everything right to be able to get that done. And then we'll also have the auditor come in and discuss that with him to make sure that we're going to show it right on the audit. So we have all that covered going forward.
To answer your question, Mr. Kraft, it's the next 1.3 million, they're saying we could get it in June, but, the federal government, it could come July, but it's supposed to be sometime this summer. It's coming.
And on the fire of the fleet, you'll see an asterisk beside 161. Chris, the fire truck that we purchased, the ladder truck that should be delivered tomorrow. So that 161 will come off and the new truck will go in its place. And then we will sell the 161 as Mr. Hatton and Chris will describe. But the truck that you bought a few months ago is finally going to arrive here in town. So what we've been doing, we now go through the fire department's budget. You'll see a summary sheet. There will be a line item sheet. And then there'll be the verbiage that describes the line item sheet, what's going to go into the expenditures. And then you'll see a personnel cost. So we can get started with that. Before we were hitting the high lows, those kind of things. I don't know how much detail y'all want to go through. We've all heard it many a time. So we pretty much know what it is. But if we just start on the summary sheet, this pretty much tells you what's happened within that department on all accounts.
This is also known as the John Bach sheet.
The John Bach sheet?
This is the John Bach sheet. That's
Thank
what
you,
we call
Mr.
it.
Bob.
Long remembered.
It has percentages, and you get to see it sort of a snapshot of everything else that we're going to be going over. The salaries and benefits, you'll see over to the right positions. You'll see the new positions that are shown there, and the budget's made. If those are deleted or whatever, then these come out, and all the line items automatically start to filter to the new numbers, and we would present that back to council. You'll see that there's 3 vacant positions. There's a lieutenant that has a person as a interim sitting there now to make sure that the staffing level is covered. And then you'll see 2 part-timers has a vacant positions, one a paramedic and one a basic. The budget, the salaries and benefits, you'll see with that shown as an increase. The benefits, as we discussed the other day, at the manager's meeting, the cost of living, how all the municipalities, what they were all sticking together and presenting. And Leland actually went ahead and approved theirs. I reckon, no, they approved it tonight, Thursday night. And if theirs goes through, their cost of living will be right at about 7.25%. They administer theirs different. We have reached out to them to see how they administer theirs. So it's a marketing adjustment. The person with the lower salaries will receive a bigger benefit than the people with the higher salaries. Some people say that's right or wrong, whatever it is. Hatton and I believe that's the marketing value that we're going to be looking at to present. So these numbers, you'll see a total number now in front of you, but on the salary sheet, when you see the personnel, right now it shows them receiving the 7.18, I believe was the actual number in the packet today. But those numbers, Chris may not receive that $7.18 amount. Chris may receive a 5%. But it won't be a COLA then, it's a marketing adjustment to make sure that everybody receives the same percentage of benefit across the board. And so that'll be an item that we will bring back to you once we meet with the Leland people to see how they administer theirs after it gets approved tonight.
So the 1.463 for 22-23, that is with the COLA or that is without the COLA?
No, everything that you see today has got all the benefits included.
With the 7.1 COLA.
Yes, 7.18, I think is the number that's in
Yeah,
there
that's
today.
what it's setting up, 7.1.
I mean, it's climbing, it's 8 point something right now.
Yeah.
But everybody said 7 to 7.25 is what they were proposing.
So that essentially is the difference in salary in FY '21, '22, and '22, '23.
Is the 3 new positions and then the COLA. We also had some benefit increases. Medical, it went up 100, I forgot the exact number. Went blank right there. Medical insurance went up, that as well, and you'll see that on the sheet. But we can figure that out here in just a minute. It's got the old and the new. But we'll tell you what that went up as well. We had looked at several options. We had looked at using some of the COLA money as part of the benefits. We could pay some of the medical with that, and then take the balance of those monies and then administer it to a market value. So the employees still receive the benefit, because not having to pay more on their insurance is a benefit. But we could take some of that money that we had earmarked for the COLA when we were looking at the marketing, because that's what some others had discussed after we told them what we were looking at. They believed that that's something that they would present as well. But that was the biggest hit that we had, was on our insurance with the League of Municipalities.
So do staff, just a general question, do staff contribute to their medical policies?
Yes. And then if you buy a family, it's 80, you can buy the 80/20 or the 70/30.
Okay,
Eye insurance, there's 2 tiers for that. There's 2 tiers for dental. Then life insurance is a fixed.
It's based on your age.
So, yeah, it all depends on your age on that one.
so it's an employee-employer plan.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're through North Carolina Blue Cross Blue Shield. I think 4 or 5 years ago, we piggybacked with the state of North Carolina because we were with other agencies. And every year, we didn't know what the bounces were going to be. So we got into that plan, which
Bigger
smooths
pool.
it over much more.
Thank you.
So the operating expenses, you'll see what those are. Capital outlay, you'll see the number 531,775 from last year. Then you see 435. Last year, we paid cash for the truck. This will show a debt service needs to be a purchase. So Mr. Hatton had talked to the people the other day to get us some basic numbers to see where we would go and what kind of values we could get. So this would be the principal and interest payments for the debt service for the 2 trucks plus the 1 ladder truck and the QRV going forward.
But the chief's gonna have to go back out on the shopping block to start looking again, since Myrtle Beach fell through.
Yes, yes, sir. And we talked about that yesterday, and I'll let Chris explain all those things. But then the last time we looked at transfers, we haven't shown any transfer yet. As we get closer in the budgets and things move, there may be a small transfer, or council can say that you would like to have a transfer. Right now, we're showing 0.
And that's transfers to capital reserve. Again, it's something Mr. Kelly and I started a few years back, trying to put money in capital reserve to lessen the pain. For example, we got almost all departments contributing something to the capital reserve funds.
Mark?
So the next page gets to really the nuts and bolts, and the verbiage page goes along with this. I know this is y'all's first time seeing it, some of you, but we describe departmental supplies. Chris will sort of give a description of what departmental supplies buy, what heavy surplus buys, what medical supplies are bought, and then previous experiences and previous prices. We break out all the contracted services and expendable equipment. Those items are broken out. Some of those are the items that we talked about during the 3-year capital plan. So before, and I don't know how y'all want to do this while we're asking questions. Anything on fringe benefits, salaries and wages, me and Mr. Hatton handle those parts. And then staff handles everything from operational expenditures to capital and those items that they bring forward. So we can go through, usually if it's a 2,000 to 5,000 increase, we bring it up and tell you what we increased or why we increased it. But if you want to go through everything, we can go through everything. If you just want certain items explained, we can explain. I don't know how y'all want to do it. That's why I'm asking.
Do you have a recommendation?
Whatever makes y'all comfortable and have you where you can answer questions and understand what's going on.
Go ahead.
I'd like to start with the bookends, these two gentlemen here. It seems to me that the cost of living adjustment, the index that you adopt there is all important. And I would hope that we're going to adopt one that's regionally sensitive in some way. Is that the case? Is that where the 7% number is coming from?
We've set that, I think it was 4 years ago, where we instituted the cost of living increase, or the market adjustment, what we're calling it now. And it's based on the same calculations that the Social Security Administration uses.
Okay.
They used 5.9, didn't they? They used 5.9?
At this point of the year, I'm not real sure. And I just go, I update it each month, see how it's running, and I pull it, like, the numbers right off of there.
Okay, well, I think we should be very transparent about, because this is going to be a large transfer increase in our budget, that we're using the index from Social Security, which was established 3 years ago. It's going to be our base index, and that index reported at what point in time are we drawing the line? The last report from Social Security, is that?
I'm sorry.
What, the numbers, how current are the cost of living numbers?
Right now, it's 7.18.
I know, but what's the last report from Social Security?
Have not seen what they've updated.
Not to belabor this, but where you draw that line with that index is going to determine the
They cut
cost.
it off right there.
And it may or may not, I mean, it could be 9% next month.
Right.
We're not going to chase the inflation index. We're going to use an index that is established at a certain date, right? Okay.
Raleigh's Town Council is voting the end of the month on their COLA. Just trying to do some research to see where we are.
Well, we were, Mr. Kelly and I talked about the 7.1, even when we went to that meeting last week, and almost all of the town managers were saying they're trying their best to get it in at 7.71.
What did we do last
They
year on
weren't
COLA?
backing off. They said they needed to take care of their employees.
I agree.
Whatever it was, what was last week, 3.12?
Something like that, 3-something, it's just jumped up big time this year.
Council looked at it and said, well, the first year we got to do it, it was .02.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. I mean, that's the mathematical equation that it came to. And then we took it from that point going forward. They said whatever the COLA is, we present it. So it's not been astronomical like it is right now. It's been it was 1.8, and it was like 2.2, then 3.1. So it's not been a set.
With gas and groceries and everything else is different than it was 2 years ago.
Well, competition for employees is also tougher in this environment.
But I believe we should be able to look at, the way that we described what we were looking at a cost of medical, and we were looking at that as a benefit for the employee. Yes, cost of living is a cost of living, but a cost of living, if we had to go up on health insurance $100 for $141 for that person to pay, that'd be a burden on them as well. So we're looking at seeing what the dollar amount is on the total, and then look how to distribute that money going forward. But we would look at the cost of insurance or whatever else went up in the benefit package, to be able to look at that to sustain the same benefits as we're currently having, and utilize that money off the top part to do that, and then distribute the rest of the money to the employees. So every employee wouldn't be receiving 7.13%. They would be recouping, the town would be looking at that as a benefit package, and we would be taking the money that the benefit increase was to make sure we sustain the same service to the employee, but at a cost that was basically absorbed through that.
Right.
And then the rest of the money would be allocated to a percentage to the employees.
Right.
They get a 3 or 4% paycheck increase, and then they get a 3% benefits increase that we absorb.
Whatever the number works out, it'd probably be more the
Yep.
5% and then 2%, somewhere around there, I would guess.
So how do you think about those two increases in respect to merit increase program?
So when this was all adopted previously, merit was discussed and we established a merit plan going forward and an evaluation plan. Mr. Haddon looks at the evaluations and comes with a average number to present and to make sure that we can finance in the budget cycle. And you'll see that in here. But we look at that, the last 3 years, I think it's been the 3% in the nets in between 2.25 and 2.5. But that was kept. We all went around the table and asked that question too. What is each town giving up to do the COLA? And they said we can't afford to give it up because they point at Leland every time and say Leland's not giving it up and our employees are going to Leland. So Leland was the one that was absorbing most of the employees.
Yeah.
That's who we're competing with.
But we haven't had people leave because of pay. We've had people retire and those things, and we've had some people that came out of COVID and wanted to work at home, and we can't do anything about that. It wasn't the money part, they just didn't want to report back to the workforce.
Right.
But we haven't had anybody that I know of walk off because we didn't pay them right or pay them enough. Or they did. The one person who did leave, I know he did go to Leland, but he took a higher position job in a different classification than he was here anyway.
Right.
He took a totally different job.
Except for Southport, we're pretty much in line with Emerald and Topsail and
And
Sloan.
so we started looking through departments. I did Chris's and I did fire. I did building inspections and did some cost analysis. The League Municipality puts out a study every year, sort of a windshield thing or dashboard, I think is what they call it these days. Sort of what's out there. And you look through it and you find the populations. And ours is more, as Councilman Baca, regional kind of thing. We have to look at the Holden Beach, the Ocean Isle, the Sloat, Emerald Isle, and those kind of places, then look at one or two that are the same population to see what people are offering. And that's how we came up with the police, we needed to raise the police package. And so those are numbers that we can provide to you as well for those groups. But we're middle of the road, probably on the average. We're higher on some, and we're lower on a few. We're not in the category of some of the other municipalities that are in our area and that are all low. So we've done good, and Councilman Bach and Charlie and Sheila and Jeff, they had sort of pushed that over the last 3 years. So on our pay scales, you'll see where, even this year, you'll see an increase in our pay scale because we have been bringing it. And then the last thing, before we get back to fire, is we've changed the pay grades. 13 will only now be used for part-time, and everybody that was in 13 is now gone to 14. There's only 2 classifications. But we have raised the minimum wage of full-time employees. Starting pay is now over $15. It's $15.07, I think is what it comes to. But we had let everybody know that we were doing that. And I've already gotten a few emails showing other towns have now gone to $15 as well. But we're just trying to get into a market situation where even all positions are marketable.
So just before we get into the chief's budget, which is always a lot of fun, because right off the top of his hat, his expendable costs, run $300,000. What you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm looking at the first budget, and it's already up 18%. The delta is huge. And you're saying, so I read you, that probabilistically 7.1% cost of living, typical merit 2.4, the way that's been scored in the past, plus an insurance on adjustment on the insurance. So you're looking at the average employee getting close to 10%. So that, and there's an argument there for retention. But then they're also proposing, they had a whole bunch of other employees, and so that number is really going to skyrocket, right? Is that fair? Am I portraying this accurately?
It's a very fair statement.
Right, okay. Just wanted to be, so everybody's clear on what we're talking about here, we're talking big numbers. And regionally competitive numbers, thank you for doing that. So I think you can make that case by saying, here are the corresponding communities, here's the salary structure, here's their COLA, here's what they're doing with insurance. And obviously, we want to line up. And we want to be in the upper middle, not the bottom, obviously.
That's why today I didn't mean to shell shock, but I wanted to get this out in front of you because this is the biggest item through the whole
Biggest
budget.
cost,
Not
right?
overwhelming.
It is.
One more
The rest of
question
the
about,
budget's simple.
one more question about merit. Do we start with a pool of merit funds that we stay within before we ever begin to allocate percentages? Or do we do the evaluation and then calculate what that dollar amount is, and it is what it is, and that comes out of the general fund? Because there are two ways to do that.
Yes, it starts normally, the highest merit that we can get in the town of Oklahoma is 3%. And we know not everyone's going to get a 3%. Some will get a 2, 1, what have you. And that's, Mr. Kelly's talking about, it averages around 2.4, 2.5 almost every single year.
So it is capped. It's capped. We have a certain pool
3%
of
per
money
employee, correct.
we can't exceed,
Yes.
and no single employee would get
We will
more than
build into the
3%.
budget 3%, and knowing that we will not use all of those funds.
Are there any employees that get no increase?
Yes.
I'm just curious. Okay.
If they're getting no increase, then they're getting also a plan where they need to improve.
To improve. Okay.
Now, any money that put into these line items in each department, for the merit, and like you said, everything's in general fund.
Right.
Whatever is not utilized at the end of the year, it goes back into the general fund balance. So that's where that money is.
Okay.
So one more time on this benefit number that you've plugged in here, $9,000, is that a forecasted number, or is that the current cost of benefits?
It's the current cost as of right now. That's with the updated Blue Cross Blue Shield number, dental, and the vision that we got, and the life insurance and
And
accident. Yes.
again, not to put too fine a point on this, given the trend line with benefits, that probably, you're probably under with that number. It's going to go up next year for sure, right? So again, that 800,000 number is probably going to be 900,000 by the time we get done with this, if we were to hire all these people, right? Just,
On the new hires and the vacancies that we have in there now, we put in the budget a estimated amount of what the benefits would be. I don't want to put their salary in there, nothing for benefits. Because if we do hire them, then we're already in the hole. So we try to build in an average.
my point is that's a plug number.
Correct.
It's like, it's not going to go down, it could go up. It reflects the current cost, right?
So, leapfrogging ahead for just a minute for context, if nothing else, listening to your budget report on Tuesday was, I was very encouraged by the increases, the amount of increases that we were seeing, and we haven't even finished the year.
Correct.
Right? So, when we establish needs, right, are we currently taking into account what those added monies, projecting how we're going to finish out this year against what will be actual increases, and somehow arriving at where we are budget-wise as to whether we're static, stay level, or go up? Is there a way to have that conversation?
Sometime before May, we will go through the general fund revenues. That's normally the last thing we'll do, and that revenues for all the departments actually. Because at that point, you've heard all the departments, you know what the costs are out there. And then I'll have it, a little bit higher, not higher, but a closer number on the actual this year to say, okay, this is what we think, like sales tax. We know what ad valorem tax is, like sales tax, utility tax, and that sort of thing. North Carolina League of Municipalities will send out a large pamphlet to all of us, and they'll say, if you budgeted so much for sales and use tax last year, we feel that you should raise it 1.2, because they're all over the state, and they know the numbers.
Okay,
So we use that as a guideline, and they've been pretty much on
on,
every year.
so as, I'm just imagining as we go through the fire chief's budget today and where we want to be conservative and, no, you can't have a new lieutenant, which will reduce your budget by X amount, or, making those decisions hopefully based on impact, what the added benefit of that would be versus what would it look like by not adding that position. We maybe can go back and reconsider, given our what we anticipate will be an improved financial situation in the actual next 22, 23 year. Is that fair?
You're going to see what the cost of a penny does between now and then. You'll see what a penny on the tax rate generates. You'll see what the old number was. You'll see what the new number was. And you can see what the gain is in between. So then that's the money that's being laid into the budget at the current tax rate that you'll see was a gain. But that'll be pointed out when we get to the administrative budget cycle, so you can start seeing all the numbers going forward from all the departments. And then whatever discussions that we have today, if there's, council says we want to look at taking the 3 people out, then at the next meeting, next Wednesday, I believe, you would see the updated numbers. It'd be in your book already.
Right.
When you come in, you'll see what that looked like. We would already make some changes on ours on the administration part, the transfers out to be able to pay for everything. And everything would already be calculated going forward. We won't wait until the end. Everything that you tell us today, if you say, take $2,000 off expendables. Okay, $2,000 off expendables. And then we just go forward. So you'll have a moving target in front of you at each one of these meetings. And every time you take something off or add something on, the next meeting you come in, it's already done.
It's already done.
So
Okay.
you'll see what the gains and losses are as you're going through.
But when we get closer to the finish line, we'll be able to look back and see things that we thought maybe was a tough loss we can add back in?
We'll keep a tally sheet to show you what you do.
Okay,
And if you take 5,000 from this line item and put 2,000 more in the other line item, we'll show those gains and losses as well.
Okay.
So when you come back to the fire department and Mr. Martin says, I think we discussed item number, whatever, budget line item X, and, we discussed taking it to $10,000 instead of $15,000. And then Chris had to go back through and look at that departmental supplies to see what departmental supplies he could remove. And then we would come back and say, well, yes, we removed it, but we could only take it to $11,000 because the contractual price for this had to exist because that is and we'll give that kind of detail back to you.
excellent. Thank you.
In the position now for fire lieutenant vacant, is that already in the budget anyway, that spot? So that's not an added,
That's not a new, anything new will have new.
okay.
That'll be just listed as vacant.
Chief, you're lean and mean, sir.
So we can go through. Any other questions? Don't mean to jump in.
No, thank you for the
Yes, sir.
overview.
Mr. Hatton, your estimated current fiscal year expense, is that through the end of this fiscal year or period to date? Since it says estimated, I'm figuring you're trying to look ahead.
I am. I'm looking ahead. I look at what the actual is, and I think this number was probably through February, so now I've got March. So I'll look at March's number and the year-to-date numbers and say, I'll update these estimates as we go along.
But this is your estimate to the end of this fiscal year at
Yes, sir.
present.
Yes, sir.
So, and just to point out Councilmember Bach's comment about the 18% request, it's really more like 18.4 numbers. So it's really 18.5% increase over last year's fiscal year budget. So I just want to point out that we didn't even spend everything that was budgeted for last year. We budgeted a number for fiscal year last year. We're not even going to come close to spending what was budgeted last year. We're actually going to be short or saving almost $600,000, and you're asking for a little over a $500,000 increase again. I don't understand why we just can't keep the same budget we had last year, because they can't even spend all of that budget. And if we're not filling vacancies, who's to say we're going to add positions and get those filled? So I just don't understand how we can even sit here and start the conversation suggesting that we need to increase the budget when we can't even spend last year's budget.
What I think we should take into consideration is understanding how long it's taking to get things. That there are items that may have been ordered but have not arrived, therefore aren't yet invoiced. So some of the money we haven't spent, is it because it hasn't yet been invoiced, because the items haven't arrived?
That
So
point,
that's
there-
just an awareness I think we want to keep in mind.
To that point, there is, you know, on one of these particular line items, for example, there is encumbered funds that is sitting in the purchasing department. That would not be shown on.
Not shown here.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there could be, on any of these line items, you know, I may be close. There may be something that's encumbered that Chris has ordered, and it's not an actual number yet because it hasn't hit the books and been paid for.
When you look at the capital outlay, you see zero. Well, we know it's $463,000 has already been spent, but it shows zero because the truck ain't here yet. We ain't wrote the check.
Okay, that's
So
what I was
that's
asking.
$463,000 of it right there.
It's in the budget number, of course, for last year, but not.
So it's accounted for in the numbers that we're seeing. So if what Councilman Martin is saying is if we haven't spent in a certain line item, that any numbers that haven't been encumbered are not shown in that. That's actual money that's available to be spent. And you might help us, Chief, how to think about that.
Yeah.
But in your current fiscal year estimate, to get us to June 30th, you're accounting for what you anticipate are expenses that were coming out of this current fiscal year budget, correct?
Correct. And that's just an estimate on my part by looking at how it's gone so far this year.
Right, so
there's a
I
big
understand
item-
that number could change before June 30th.
Correct.
But we're not looking at that number changing by $600,000 or $1 million, or, I mean, you're pretty close on where you are. Because I know how conservative you are when you're looking at the budget. So I've got to believe you've padded in to that estimate for this fiscal year some conservative buffer to account for expenses you know are coming over the next couple of months. That's my point, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, no,
is
I heard
just-
you. I just wanted to make sure that funds that weren't yet spent because the equipment wasn't here, how we were accounting for that to verify what the number we're looking at actually means. And I think we need to hear the chief explain why there's money left in that line item, and justify what he's asking for.
If
So-
you look, like I said, capital outlay, he did not estimate the capital outlay. He estimated everything from operating expenditures, fringe benefits, and salaries. Capital outlay is a fix. We know we bought a fire truck. It's coming tomorrow. So $436,000 is coming out of here again. It shows zero right this minute. So your 600 is not 600. It's $436,000.
That's what I was asking.
So,
But there's a story that goes with the budget that I believe we need to hear to make sense of the numbers we're seeing.
there is a story, and why don't we agree on the storyline, and we'll get to the chief. I agree with my colleague at the other end of the dais. Typically, good budgeting practice, and I'm familiar with this, from the school side, you want to end up with anywhere from 3%, maybe 4%. That's the cushion typically. If you're running at 99% of your budget, you're running on the edge, so there's always going to be a little bit. But if there's a larger amount, 10 or 15%, right, then you've over budgeted, and that's not good either, right? So we're trying to get to the fine line, right? So per your point, I want to hear the explanation, and then we'll see. But
Yeah,
you're right, we
exactly.
shouldn't have a huge surplus forecast for this department when they're turning around and they want $1 million increase.
That's correct.
Right, and every department, we're running into numbers, like, you could extrapolate 18% across all these departments, and add $1 million worth of people, and your budget, you're looking at a tax increase that even you would dislike a lot. Not to mention me, so we'll see. Go ahead, Chief.
Well, and one last comment, not necessarily a question. So as every department head comes before us with this budget workshop this season, my first question is going to be, if we cannot find a way to cover your request, so you're asking for $516,000 increase over last year, which you're getting ready to explain to us how you couldn't even spend last year's money, so there's going to be excess that we could carry forward to cover your request of $517,000 or $516,000. So the question is going to be, and I want every department head that's here today and in future workshops to put this in the back of their mind. If we cannot find the money at the current tax rate of 23 cents per hundred in our general fund budget, are you prepared to stand in front of the public and say, I'm asking you to pay more in your taxes to give me these items for my department? If you're not prepared to make that comment publicly and swear to that in front of these people, then don't bring me a number that's going to force me to make that decision to increase taxes to give you what you want. I know we're short-staffed, and I know we're running mean and lean, but we're running. We survived this year with what we have. We need to look at surviving next year with what we have. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you come up here. Are you prepared to ask the public to pay more for your department? Don't ask me to make that decision. You make it now before you bring me a number. That's my final comment.
That's fair.
Yeah, when I do the estimate on the estimated revenues and estimated expenses for every department, again, I just try to look at the past history of what they normally have spent in April, May, June, and because we'll have some departments, for example, water and wastewater, they're gearing up right now. And we know what they're gearing up for this summer. It's heavy, heavy, heavy on them. And another example, in the wastewater system, they could have a pump go out. That's $45,000 right there that we have to come up with immediately. So I don't know those kind of things.
So when you've done the estimated expenses and the estimated income, really haven't factored in the increase that you told us about the other night, that we are increasing that much in the first quarter. And
Correct.
Estimated income's not factoring that in yet.
Yeah, that's right. As we get into the revenues.
Well, that is on the revenue side.
On the revenue
On
side.
the revenue side,
Yeah.
correct.
Yes. So, on going back to your statement, so we'll bring them what you'll see going forward, now that we know what you would like to address. We will go back through the expenditures, and we will have a more defined number going forward. We will show the capital expenditures. We will show whatever POs exist. We will show workman's comp. We know we won't get that bill till June. So we can go ahead and we'll show you everything on there to reduce the numbers that you're asking for. So then you can see what's actually going to be spent before the end of the year. Because when you say it the way that you said it, it sounds like $600,000, but we know that's not the true number. It's smaller than that. So we'll go back and look at that going forward in each department to make sure that we show you what the actual estimated expenses are going forward and more of a true and accurate, defendable item going there. And as far as the items that we listen to what council says in meetings, We listen to people stand there and ask questions, and we listen to each one of y'all, what your responses are back to these people. The personnel that we have listed comes out of mostly what y'all have said sitting there. Yes, we need to look at helping you, we need to look at get this. Yes, we need to bring in more of this so we can change our response times. So these are items that are level of services that we as a town provide. It's not me saying, I'm going to provide this service. It's you that makes that decision. It says what service you want to provide and the level that you want us to provide it. If we are comfortable with 10 months or 6 months taken to do something, then we don't need to ask for people. If we're content a fire calls 10 minutes instead of 5, then that's what we'll do. But it's not to be placed on us to make that decision on the service that you want to provide. That's just my philosophy.
Fair. And I would like to see a work product, if you will, when we're done and when we're prepared to present this to the public, that we have a story, that we have created a narrative around the budget, much like we did for the SAN funding options, that not only help explain the numbers, the possibilities, but explain the perspective, the shared perspective that we as a council have around what this budget accomplishes, what we've been able to do, the improvements over previous level of services, and where we've had to hold the line for the sake of keeping taxes down, But I think we need a narrative to present along with, and maybe you've done this in the past, I apologize, I don't know that, along with the numbers, because numbers are hard to read and you don't see intent and those kinds of things. So that would be my request.
Well, Councilman Martin's point, I thought was well taken. We need the best available data set we can get, right? We don't, even if that's a forecast that you're developing, because that's important. The other thing I would say, and I'm going to disagree with my colleague about this, ultimately, the requests coming from department reflect their thinking and their priorities, but we're going to have to choose as elected officials. I can tell you right now, we can't afford all the people they're proposing. People are the cost driver in every budget, not to mention the equipment. So at some point, we're going to have priorities. And some priorities are not going to be as important as other priorities. That's the nature of this beast. What I expect from the administration is to make recommendations which are sensible. They're saying they have. So if we wanted to fill all of these needs, we could. But we have a tax rate significantly higher. So we need to balance that.
At a time where economics are challenging for everyone.
Sure, just the economics on COLA and insurance and adding people. You can see the driver it's going to be. And lots of departments are probably, with some degree of, warranted assertion, are going to say, I need more people to provide more service. So I don't want to steal your thunder, Chief. Go ahead, make your argument.
No, I don't scare easily.
So do you want to go through line item for line item, or would you like to hit the highlights, or would you like to, how would y'all like to address it?
This is one of our bigger budgets.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes and no. Council, do you have any, do you have a preference? I think I'd rather at least, I'm looking at these numbers for the first time. Might be helpful to especially touch the increases where there's significant increases.
Let's go backward while you're gathering your thoughts. So since I have the advantage of, I have my notes from last year. So the aerial truck, that has been satisfied. That was your number one request. There was a lot of discussion about the mainland and what to do and how to staff it. And at one point, in my notes, it reflects that we were going to get an independent review to assess and provide us with a 3-year plan. Did we do that?
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you.
We, at one point, my notes reflect, we decided that we were going to get an independent assessment of what we needed to do on the mainland. Have we done that? No. Okay, so that has not occurred. One of the other concerns you had, and I'd be interested to hear your comment on this, Chief, you were worried about overlapping calls for medical and fire. Your response time was increasing. Is that still the same situation?
It is. We actually did a little bit better in 2021 on the overlapping. So the percentage went down 1% from 19 point to 18 point. I have the exact figures here, which in essence proved the point I was making last year, because our response times went down by a half a minute because our overlapping was less. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be more this year. We also had the most amount of calls last year than we've ever had in the history here, by over 200 calls. And I have those stats in here as well, where the most we ever had was 15 and change, and last year we topped over 1,700 calls, 1,787 to be exact. And I anticipate this year will be more than that. And again, we've done that over the last 8 years, increasing by 50 to 75 calls per year with the same amount of staff that we have now.
Okay, so two things I think are important, and I'll turn this over to my colleagues who may want to ask specific line item questions. I'm trying to stay at 30,000 feet here. So in the last several budgets, other than equipment, you've asked for more manpower to put on the trucks. You've tried to expand the crews. We've yet to fund that. This year, you're asking for three EMTs. So it appears to be a shift.
3 paramedics.
3 paramedics. Why the shift? Why do we suddenly need 3 paramedics?
I asked for this last year. I'm not asking for anything different than I asked for last year.
This is the same request?
The same request.
So not
as last year.
firefighters, you want?
Didn't get approved last year. So there are firefighters. They're firefighter paramedics.
Okay.
So they're cross-trained.
So this would fill every shift. It's the same as last year.
This is the same request as last year. Last year it didn't get approved.
Okay.
So I haven't changed anything. It's being requested again.
Okay.
And I'm trying to put that, so it's not 3 people per shift. It's a total of 3 people. It's 1 person on each.
That's what I mean,
3 shifts.
filling each of the shifts.
Correct.
You have
1
3
for
shifts,
each
right?
shift. And that would make us have 4 people instead of 3 down at Station 1. And the biggest reason for that is, one of the biggest reasons our call volume is increasing is because of Pine Forest and the nursing home and the Hawthorns, and even more are going in. And what's happening is that crew they're there right now as we speak at Pine Forest, that means the entire island is open, the entire west end, everything down there, because Station 3 is all the way down at South Harbor. And what's happening is we're leaving the whole area open, and then that's what happens with the overlapping calls and the call volume. It's because now a call comes out over here, and Station 3 has to respond to that because this station's all the way up at Pine Forest. And they're spending every day going back and forth and leaving the entire island open. If we put a 4th person down there, I could split the crew up, and I could still send 2 people up there. I can't leave 1 person by themselves out of a 3-person crew. But if I split them up and send 2 over to Pine Forest or to the west end, then I still have 2 there for a better response time than bringing these people from South Harbor over.
Okay.
It's just it's a logistical thing. It's not just the amount of people, it's how we are geographically set up. We're a horseshoe is basically what it is. And we are 2 ways off the island. And it is affecting our response times, and it's affecting our call volumes as far as overlapping calls. Being able to put another crew on there is going to alleviate both and make our response times better for the citizens.
So, thank you for that explanation. We're currently surviving without the 3, but obviously I can see the enhanced efficiency you would gain. I'm concerned that we don't have a plan for Williamson and locating a fire station or substation out there, which would ultimately solve this problem. What would the staffing look like for that station? I mean, I think that's what we need to be planning for in the future. We know it's
Well,
coming.
I told the town council this about that station 8 years ago, and it's been a topic of mine every year. I didn't say 8
indulge
years
us.
ago that they had to have a station then, but I started telling 8 years ago that they needed to start planning for it. And they do. Now, whether it's in Pine Forest or whether it's in the new, the Williamson track, that's up to the town on where it goes and what kind of arrangements they make with developers and land purchases and things like that. But another station is needed up there, and it's needed sooner than later, but I believe that's already in the planning stages, right? To the new station. We'd have to add more people, of course, but at that time, but these would move over with them.
Yeah, well, I hear you, Chief, and I would like to see the plan sooner as opposed to later, because it's not just the physical building, it's people, it's equipment, right? There are a lot of
Oh, yeah,
other
yeah.
additional things that go into
Additional-
this.
Yep, additional vehicles, additional staff.
Oh,
Yep,
absolutely.
it all
Turnout
comes-
gear, so on and
yep.
so forth.
And like I said, I've been talking about that for years. It's not new, it's not a new conversation, not for me. And I know they're new on the council, but you can go back and look at 8 years' worth of tapes.
I can-
I've said it every time.
I can tell you, having spent 4 months of my life campaigning, people don't get it. And they don't, the wake-up call was the Williamson people appearing at a meeting and saying, hey, guess what? We're going forward. We're going to put 7,000 units out there. Now that has people's attention, and that's why we need a plan. The timing just wasn't ripe in the
Right.
past.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, so that, I want to see that plan as soon as possible. I'm going to yield the rest of my time to.
Mr. Kelly, are we 2 years away from turning dirt at the Williamson track?
I think the permit for the building here could be ready.
No, I understand this was asked for last year and the year before, and it's still being asked for, and golly gee.
I think the Williamson track is more suited for what we need. Putting in Pine Forest is at the end of, sort of like at South Harbor, it's at the end of our district. We can't respond past that. So we do need to relocate the station to the Williamson track, and that's part of the development
Pine
agreement.
Forest is growing rapidly now.
It's growing.
Yeah.
House-wise, it's not growing very fast, but it has the 2 locations that Chris gets called to all the time. And then the police, they're going to talk to you about getting called to the apartments. So that's something that they have to address as well.
Yeah.
Chief, can you comment, I'm sorry, well, they're still pondering, $1.3 million in replacement equipment?
I'm sorry.
1.3 million, 1.3 million in replacement equipment. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
So the replacement equipment that we're talking about in capital, now that includes the radios, David?
Yeah.
All right. So the radios,
Now, the 1.3.
No, it's your 3 trucks.
It's
oh, okay.
truck engines, I see, 2 of them, and a platform truck.
All right, so these vehicles are what we have, 171 and 173, which are the first out engines that we have right now at stations 1 and 2. And then, of course, the platform is the second platform that we need to replace. In addition to the one we're getting tomorrow, which is replacing that 1991 85-foot ladder truck, this one would be replacing a 95-foot that's over 20 years old. The engines, that's where the Myrtle Beach thing comes into play. So what we did back in 2015 was we bought 4 engines from Myrtle Beach that were coming off of a lease. And they released then, and so that lease is over in 2022. It's a 7-year lease. And we were hoping to do the same thing with them. We'd sell our 4 that we have and buy theirs. However, they are now looking at buying trucks. They're not looking to continue their lease program. They have a new administration down there, new fire chief, new finance director, new elected officials, so on and so forth. And they are not financially prepared to buy, because they have 6 engines, and they are not financially prepared to buy 6 engines. So they're still trying to work out their financial logistics on replacing the trucks they have. And so they're not prepared to give any of these up just yet, but they said probably next year. So we still need to look at replacing, because the general lifespan of an engine is about 15 years old, about 15 years, and we're buying them at 7 from Myrtle Beach. Well, if we have to wait another 2 or 3 years, they're going to be close to 10 years old, 2/3 of the way through their lifespan. I'm not really sure it'd be worth buying them at that time if we have to wait. So we probably need to at least look at what's available this year outside of these Myrtle Beach purchases and see. But I'm going to be honest with you, the problem is like everything else, getting equipment is tough to do. If I order a set of turnout gear today, it's a year out. If I order a defibrillator, it's 8 to 10 months out. If you order a truck, it's over a year out. And I realize that we're buying used, but we cannot get the used truck until that fire department gets the new truck that's replacing it. So every time you go to buy a truck, it has, even a used one will be available in the fall of '22, because that's when their new truck that's replacing it is scheduled to come in. So, it's difficult at this point to buy anything. Not to buy it, but when you expect to get it.
How close are these pieces of equipment to end of life? Are they end of life?
The engines are, yeah, because we got them at 7, and we've had them for 7, so they're 14 years old.
How about the first piece?
And the ladder truck is over 20 years old.
I'd like to come back to staff, if,
Excuse me just a minute.
yes,
Could I put in something about input about a little output?
sure,
Could we get a break?
sure.
Thanks.
It's 11:34. What do you want, 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
Hopefully it won't take too long.
Do you have a motion for a 5-minute break?
5-minute break.
Yeah, you don't need a motion.
Second?
We don't need a
Don't need a
motion.
motion? 5-minute break. Coming back from break and bring the meeting back to order. We were discussing the fire budget, and one of the suggestions that I had is we work through this rather than bounce back and forth throughout the budget, that we have a conversation about staffing, have a conversation about rolling stock, and then have a conversation about supplies and equipment, so that we can kind of keep it in our heads. And if you could help us, Chief, with where did we perform well this year, and where were the shortcomings, and what are the things that are absolutely bottom line needed to fulfill those shortcomings. I would think those would be the highest priorities, given the national economic situation that we're in. I know we'll try to hold taxes to minimum increase, if at all. We'll spend the increase in revenue first, if you will, from a budget perspective before we raise a tax dollar. But it would be helpful if maybe we can approach it in that way. So from, if we could start with staffing and just kind of tell us what your absolute must-haves and why, and what we would be missing if those positions didn't get filled.
Well, as far as the staffing goes, as we were discussing before, we are short-staffed. We are answering 600 more calls per year than we were 6, 7 years ago with the same amount of staff then that we have now. And geographically, we've grown bigger with the development of 211 and Midway. I do want to back up a minute on that 1.345 that Councilor Bach brought up on the trucks, because I left out that QRV in addition to the engines and the ladder. And the whole idea of that QRV is to try to help keep some of these fire trucks off the road at 4 miles to the gallon for every medical call that we have. Now, I'm going to come right out and tell you, this is not going to eliminate these fire trucks being on the road for medical calls, but it will reduce them.
Reduce, yes.
Because we are going to have overlapping calls, as I said. So that QRV is going to be on one call when another call comes out, and the engines are going to have to pick those up. The other thing about a QRV with one person responding is I can't send them by themselves. We can't send one person to a drowning. We can't send one person to a cardiac arrest. We can't spend, so there are certain criteria calls that the QRV with one person is not going to be sufficient. We're going to have to send the engine with a full load of crew to certain criteria calls. I don't want to send one person on a domestic, an assault, anything that we're involving police in for just the safety of that individual. So there are certain criteria calls that we will still have to utilize an engine for, and then of course secondary and third calls. But by utilizing a QRV with one medic or one EMT for a lot of the basic lower level acuity calls, which we call alphas and bravos and things like that, that we can send them and in effect alleviate some of the fuel from these trucks and also leave a full engine crew back at the station to be prepared for a fire call. So I think, now I can tell you this, the staff I need more than the QRV. I mean, if you were to turn down the QRV and give me the staff, I can work with that. I cannot work with it in reverse. There's no point in giving me the QRV if you're not going to give me the staff, because if I'm only going to have 3 people down there, then the QRV is going to be out the window. It just doesn't make sense.
So to me, the QRV makes sense, right? Because there are cost savings associated with that, and it makes a lot of sense from any number of perspectives. So what are the minimum number of staff you need to add the QRV?
Those additional 3 people, that one person per shift, in order to, in effect, put that QRV on the road. Now, as far as our shortcomings versus our, I don't really know how to put that into perspective. I mean, my job as the fire chief is to make recommendations based on previous history, statistics, call volumes, responses, overlapping. It's a numbers game. And truly that's what it is. I don't know that I would say we had shortcomings. We do the best we can with what we get. And that's really what it comes down to. It's more or less what, Council Martin, you made the statement about, am I prepared? I've been standing up here for 10 years. I'm openly talking to the public right now. And I tell them what I recommend every year. I don't have any fear of telling them this is what is needed in this town. I will make it a point to tell you, all of you, and I've said this before, I don't live here. I don't pay taxes here. I don't vote here. I'm telling you, none of this is for my personal use or benefit. This is for you, and this is for all the people that elected you. I make recommendations on what's needed by the 10,000 people that live here and all the people that come through here, which is a lot. So it is your choice. It's up to you whether are you willing to stand in front of the public and say that I didn't approve this, or I didn't give the staffing, or I didn't replace these trucks, and that's why we have poor response times, and that's why we have So it's not whether I want to stand in front of the public, it's whether you want to stand in front of the public. So, so when I present this budget, I'm not presenting it for me. I'm presenting it for you. And I'm making recommendations based on what I think that these people in this town need and deserve. Response times are always affected. I mean, we had that ladder truck break down on the way to a fire. I literally had to stop somebody and have them pick up the driver while they left the truck on the side of the street and then call another truck in for a fire. Everybody knows about the wreck that we had the other day. We needed all hands on deck. We had to have 2 off-duty people come in to go staff Station 1, which luckily we have good staff, and they were willing to leave their houses at 10 o'clock at night and come down and staff this, another engine, and then we had to have St. James go to Southport because we had half of Southport on that call with us.
Right.
So we have a very good rapport with our neighboring fire departments. We're all there to help each other out. But that's the other thing about staffing. We can't just think about ourselves because we get all the help in the world when we ask for it. We have to be willing to give it also. And we cannot give it without reducing our staff here.
Right.
So, you know, the staffing that I'm asking for isn't just a benefit for us. We are primarily what we need it for, but we also need it because we owe our neighbors and our neighboring towns and our neighboring departments all the help that they give us.
So let me ask the question this way. What is absolutely mission critical?
Mission critical is
This year.
going to be the QRV, definitely the replacement of the platform and those 3
Staff.
staff members. That, to me, is mission critical at this point. The engines, I mean, you know, if we had to wait, you know, a year, but the problem is, again, I can't even tell you when I'm going to find. It took 7 months to find a ladder truck, you know. And then also going back to your statement about, you know, what the extra money or not using money that we budgeted for, I also saved $75,000 on that truck. I mean, we were budgeted for, I don't remember what we were budgeted for, but that truck was listed for $450,000, and I made an agreement with them and an offer at $375,000. So there's $75,000 of that right there. But then also, I have to look at price increases, and I don't know what those price
What they
increases are going to be. So when I present my budget numbers to these gentlemen, they all include 3 to 5% increases, but those increases may not be there. And then I am not a person who is just going to have a vendor come in and tell me, this is what it's going to cost you. Because my general answer to them is, no, that's not what it's going to cost me. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about the fact that I'm buying 5 of these, or I'm buying 6 of these, or I'm going to buy more next year. The same thing came with the Myrtle Beach trucks when we were talking about possibly purchasing them 2 this year and 2 next year as opposed to all 4 like we did the last time. And I made it very clear to Myrtle Beach, if we enter into an agreement of 2 trucks this year and 2 trucks next year, we're entering into an agreement on a 4-truck price, and we're locking into that price now, barring anything doesn't happen to those 2 trucks in the year that we're waiting for them. This is, I am always looking for ways to cut costs and save money. I don't think that we should be being called out for not spending it. I think we should be being thanked for saving the money and having money left over, as opposed to coming to you the first week of June and saying, I'm out and I need another $100,000 to get me through this next month. So there are always ways that you can save, and most of the vendors that I deal with, they don't like dealing with me, because I've already had a vendor that had come in and gave me a price on something, and then another vendor came in and gave me a price. And the first vendor found out and called me up and said, well, I can beat that price. Well, why didn't you beat it the first time?
Right.
If this is the best price that you can give, why didn't you offer me that the first time you talked to me? Because you're just trying to overprice me until you suddenly have, I don't I don't waste my time with that kind of stuff. You either give me the best price that you have now, and we'll move forward from that. I don't have time to waste and haggle and go back and forth. So I would always look to give you the worst case scenario and have money left over, not the other way around.
This may be a year, I'm thinking, my colleagues, please chime in. This may be a year that is particularly challenging financially, where we want to stay as close to our current tax rate as possible, spending increased revenue before we add additional tax. And so we may have to be extremely conservative in how we move forward. So if it's 3 to 5% more, that's one thing on the line items for equipment and things. If we're replacing old equipment, it's good to know that. So to be able to help us pare this down so that we make the right decisions. And then if a fire truck becomes available next year, then we amend the budget to take advantage of that situation rather than collecting the money now that, do you see what I'm saying? So we have that latitude. So to say it's not in the budget this year would, acknowledging that we have an opportunity to amend the budget if we actually were to find the truck that you think we should, or trucks that you think we should be purchasing. That seems maybe a better way to go. Plus, we haven't yet gotten to the fire fees discussion, which may provide more in the way of lessening the burden on the general fund, as we talked about yesterday. So that's another consideration. But if you could help us focus on what your most critical needs are in order to maintain or improve the level of service and effectiveness of functioning, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and that's why I say the ladder truck is more important, because a ladder truck has so many components to it. And when you're talking about one that's over 20 years old, you know, when you're talking about an engine, you're talking about a lot of motor, and you're talking about a lot of lights, and you're talking about a lot of electrical and plumbing. But then once you get into ladders, you have all that, and then you're adding all the hydraulics and all of the,
Got it.
you know, and you know that come with the ladder itself and the platform.
Yeah, when the cost of maintenance
Cost of
begins to
maintenance,
approach
is right.
the cost
maintenance.
of replacement.
Do we
Right.
sell the old tired ladder truck?
I'm sorry.
Do we sell the old tired
Yes.
ladder truck?
Yes.
Pick up $100,000 in return for that?
I don't know that we would get that much for a ladder that old. No. I mean, we got a very, very good deal on that 1991 ladder when we bought it 7 years ago from a fire department up in New Jersey. You know, what I would basically do is I would go and I would look and see what that year range is going for from a broker, and then we can kind of see what we could put it out there for.
But not an exciting number.
Yeah. The problem with engines going used is that some styles are a dime a dozen. There's hundreds and hundreds of them available across the United States, and they're in terrible, terrible conditions, you know, so really finding a good one. That's why the Myrtle Beach thing worked out very well for us. It was one owner, you know, that leased it. It was only 7 years old. They had low mileage, and, you know, they started off at $300 per engine when we first started talking with them, and we ended up buying 4 of them at $200 per engine. So that was $100,000 per truck. That was like buying 3 and getting 1 free. So like I'm saying, we don't, you know, we're not out there just flinging the taxpayers' money around. I mean, we are good students for the taxpayer. We always have been. I think every department head here is like that, including the 2 gentlemen sitting next to me. We're not, you know, we're not out there carelessly spending money.
So let me put a proposition to you, because we live and we function in a world of limits, and you know that as well as I do. Fiscally, culturally, there are always going to be limits. If we funded your personnel request and your QVR, that's basically a $200,000 expenditure. And we defer on the others with the caveat the mayor mentioned that if the truck were to break down and couldn't be repaired, we would amend the budget, because obviously we have to have the truck. What is the mileage on the 20-year-old truck, by the way?
The mileage on,
On the truck, the platform truck?
well, I have that
You're saying
written
it's
down.
end of life, but I'm curious.
I had the mileage written. I don't know off the top of my head. I thought we had well, we did, but they're blanked out.
All right, well,
I honestly,
my proposition remains the same. Would that be enough to get you through another year?
I'm sorry?
If we gave you the 3 firefighters and a QVR, does that get you through the next year? With the caveat, if something breaks down, we'll.
As far as waiting for a ladder for the next year?
Yeah,
Well,
you're going to wait anyway.
again, anything can be done. I mean, we can work with anything that the council decides on doing. Now maintenance and repair, I can't tell you what that's going to be. I mean,
I'm just
anything can
asking-
break down at any time.
I'm trying to locate your bottom line here. You're saying the personnel request is critical. That's what you really need in a QVR.
Personnel, yes.
You're telling me also, ultimately, when we build the mainland station, this crew will just move over there. Right, so in a way, we're meeting a present need, but also anticipating a future need. Would that be fair? Or am I overstating that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to know.
And even if we budgeted for the trucks, new rolling stock this year, we don't know when we would get it. So it seems as if maybe to take the approach that once we find the truck, we amend the budget to be able to leverage that opportunity might be another more
Makes sense.
effective approach. And then consider if we were able to estimate what we'll spend through June, increase that by a nominal percentage, whatever that is, 5, 7, 10%, to account for the increases in everything that we're all experiencing, even for groceries, then might that get you through the next year with those caveats?
Yeah, I mean, again, we can look, as you said, we can look and see what is out there and what is available to go as far as engines or a ladder. And then, I might find 2 good engines and not even find an acceptable ladder. So to go and look at it that way and do it that way, that is an option. To look at what comes up in the next year and then make an amendment if we have a deal we can't refuse. so to
Because,
speak.
it may not come to us till the following budget year, which would, I just think this is going to be a particularly tough year for our taxpayers and for us all. I think to maybe take that approach in your situation, because being able to get the engines that we want, plus the fire fee, which I think we need to add into that, which would give us potentially 2/3 of the $3 million budget. That would be a good thing as well.
Well, whatever the council decides to do on the fire fees, any kind of increase that is potentially looked at always obviously will reduce the impact on the general fund budget.
Right.
From what's needed for the fire department's funding.
Right. So is that an approach you could live with as we move forward? And does it make sense to
Yeah,
amend
as
this
long as,
presentation?
as long as the council will be willing to amend the budget, should we come across a truck that we, think will be a good fit and is in good condition, good mileage, good, and they're willing to look at that in the middle of the budget year, then I'm fine with that.
Council?
Chief, what I'm hearing you say is, and I appreciate you saying whatever it is, and you're gonna have to live with it, even if it's something not pleasant. Hopefully it can become pleasant. I'm hearing you say if you get your 3 people, if you get your QRV truck, if you get an understanding that if you were to find the right trucks at the right price, that door's not closed. If you were to get the 3 people in a QRV truck, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
And a nominal increase in,
And then I want to ask 2 other questions. The COLA, and I guess we're going to come back to it with every department head and probably with Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hatton regularly. The COLA increase takes most of these firemen, who I respect very much, from a $60,000 salary to almost a $70,000 salary. If the COLA were a little bit lower, would that dishearten the firemen if they were to get a 5% increase instead of a 7% increase?
Well, in the fire service, I'm going to tell you that nobody thinks they make enough money. So, I mean, it's just, but it's not, in the past, it's been a matter of staying competitive with local, like Leland and like.
And we're not
Triton and-
non-competitive
Right.
now.
And.
Before the other towns do their COLAs.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I wouldn't say that the cost of living, not being 7 point, well, is gonna cause a massive walkout of firefighter. I mean, everybody understands the way the system works. And as they were saying before too, it's a matter of what you're offsetting the increase of the individual on their insurance. And, I don't have any problem speaking to my staff either, on behalf of what the town's decisions are. I mean, that's what a department head's supposed to be doing.
Lastly, is it out of the realm of expectation to have Brunswick County answering some of these Pine Forest calls? If most of the calls.
They do answer them.
Okay.
Brunswick County answers every call we answer on the EMS side because they transport.
So that doesn't lessen your load?
No.
Okay. Shucks.
Now, what we have discussed with Brunswick County, not as an individual fire department, but as a fire chiefs association, all right, for all the fire chiefs in Brunswick County, is maybe looking at those types of facilities and not maybe eliminating what's called an alpha level call, because those are the lowest acuity calls that there is. As a matter of fact, there's such a low acuity, they don't even require lights and siren response. It's just normal driving down the road to get there. If we can stop the fire, and all the fire departments across the county from having to respond to, now I'm not talking about in a personal residence, I'm talking about in the assisted livings where we get 10 of those, a day, not 10 in one place, but across the county, we might get 20 of
Every time
those
there's a
day.
fall, your people have to respond.
Yeah, or just the slip out of the wheelchair kind of thing, lift assist and things like that. Now, we can't eliminate that in every single residence in the county, but for assisted living, nursing homes and things like that, that would greatly reduce the
Burden?
duplication of effort, so to speak, and the cost of the response. You're talking about manpower, you're talking about fuel, you're talking about trucks, you're talking about wear and tear, you're talking about everything for, but again, that's something that we've talked to them about as a whole, and they actually asked us to send, working with Max Smith on this, who you met yesterday, working on getting a list of those types of facilities in each fire district's area. And we really kind of have to run numbers because we also don't want to overburden our countywide EMS system at the same time, because sometimes we get there first and we cancel them. So we're doing them, and then sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes we get there at the same time and we're all there, but again, we don't want to overburden them. They're short-staffed too, and they're covering 800 and something square miles. So, but we're always looking for ways to improve as a whole, not just for us, but for the county.
Where is that decision made?
That is made with in coordination with the EMS director, Emergency Management Director, and the Brunswick County Fire Chiefs Association.
Okay.
So we as an association would vote on that and then bring it to them for their approval, because you have to remember that everything, when it comes to that, everything is in a system plan. And that system plan is presented to the North Carolina Office of Emergency Medical Services. So we all have to operate as that system plan is written. Right. So if we do a change like that, we've got to rewrite the plan and then take it to the state. And, usually the state doesn't deny that. It's just, it's a formality, but it has to be changed and written. So, any kind of response changes. So I want to use this QRV. Well, I would like to use this QRV for paramedic response, but I also don't want to put all of the EMS calls on our paramedics and leave our EMTs to sit in the station waiting for a fire. So my question to Brunswick County is, on these alpha level or Bravo level calls, can I send a EMT and not a paramedic? Because we're a paramedic agency.
Right.
Well, we can, but they have to rewrite that part of their system plan, because we're in their system plan. And,
As a certain,
and so like, everything is, I think, doable, but you have to go through the right process to get it done the right way.
So when would those proposals be made, and what is the process to state approval that allow us to enact it?
Well, I've already made the initial, based on the possibility, because if we don't, I'd like to get a head start.
Right.
If we don't change it, then we don't have to submit anything. But I've already talked to Brunswick County, and they have not gotten back to me with an answer, but they basically said that they didn't see that any issue with that, other than them changing, a couple of words in their system plan and resubmitting it to the state. It's not that.
It could save our trucks a little bit, couldn't it?
It would, yeah, it would.
Well, it's also a matter, it's not just saving our trucks, but it's also a matter of not
Duplication.
overworking our paramedics and leaving our EMTs to, we need to even the load, on our staffing as well. So that would enable us to send EMTs to certain acuity calls and paramedics to the bigger ones, or the higher acuity.
They're needed.
Right.
Any other comments, suggestions?
So this is what I'm hearing. So first concern, we have a list of inventory with no miles and hours reported for any of the equipment. And I ask that because I know at the county level, equipment doesn't reach end of life because of the year of the equipment. It reaches end of life because of the mileage or the hours on the physical equipment. For example, my patrol car with the Sheriff's Department is a 2006 Crown Victoria with 194,000 miles on it. I just received that as my replacement car because my previous car was a 2006 Crown Victoria with over 204,000 miles on it. So my replacement vehicle is still considered life with the county's sheriff's office in my role as a chaplain. So I'd like to understand miles and hours on all the equipment, not just the years, because we don't replace equipment just because it's of a year. It's because it's true useful life based on usage, mileage, and hours. So that information would be very helpful. The other comment I would make is you sat here and said that mission critical, you need 3 people in the QRV. Yet prior to that, you said you've been coming here for 8 years asking for the same 3 people, and no council has given that to you yet. So if that's mission critical.
No, I didn't say I've been asking for 3 people. I asked for them last year. What I've been telling the council for 8 years is they need to prepare for the future of truck replacements and station additions and staffing for those stations. That was for years to come. I told them that they need to start planning now for the future. I didn't ask for those then.
Okay, fair enough. So then, when you thought there was a moment in time, as Councilmember Bach was speaking, that maybe you would not get those three positions or the QRV, you quickly said, well, we'll make do with what we have, because we always do. So, and back to the mayor's question about, has there been any degradation in service level or our ability to meet the needs of the community in this last year? It sounds like the answer to that question is no. You've been able to serve the community and meet the needs of the community with the personnel and equipment that you have in place today. So I guess I'm a little confused on the comment that this is mission critical to get 3 more people on board with a QRV versus making things work with what you have, and you've been able to respond to services for this last fiscal year. And furthermore, I'll add to that, you just said that every 911 call the county responds to. So is that mission critical for us to back up the county on those calls? Or it doesn't sound like we're rolling at the same time they're rolling, and that's a procedural thing. We can get into that later, but I just want to make sure that we understand that the county is responding, because our taxpayer dollars goes to the county as well for those services. So they are responding to every 911 call, because we don't have dispatch here. Our dispatch is run through the county, so they're responding to everything.
Correct.
And lastly, if you were to get 3 new positions in the budget for full-time firefighter paramedics, does that eliminate the 5 vacancies under the part-time staffing that have gone unfilled for firefighters and paramedics? I just understand the balance here. We got 5 vacancies for part-time people that apparently either we can't fill, or are they new vacancies recently and we haven't started interviewing? So we can do some math here. If we can eliminate some of the part-time jobs and roll that money over and to fund some of the full-time positions, kind of offsets the budget there. You see where I'm going with that? So just creatively, I know you're doing the best you can with what you have. I'm asking you to try to hold the line. You're going to have some money left over this year. That's greatly appreciated. If we scale this thing back with the opportunity, if we find a great deal on a fire truck in the future, we'll make that happen. But I'm asking you to try to hold the line with what you have and creatively figure out a way to get mission critical personnel in place with where we are today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I will tell you, first of all, we started 2 people this week, so they're not in there part-time. So we actually have 7 part-timers. We only have 3 vacancies, not 5. The other issue is that some of the vacancies are part-time are usually because they will take full-time. So they've transitioned from part-time to full-time. As far as part-time staff, I had this conversation with Councilor Bach last year. I needed 3 people. If I got 6 people, I would eliminate part-time altogether. But I'm not asking for 6 people. And I'll tell you why I'm not asking for 6 people. I'm not asking for 6 people because filling 3 is going to be tough enough. Because it just is. That's just where we are in the world right now. People don't want to work. So, and it is a little bit difficult to get cross-trained. I can get firefighter EMTs all day long. Even if we put out a firefighter paramedic application process, we will get 1 paramedic applicant and 10 EMTs, even though it said we're looking for paramedics, because almost all firefighters are now cross-trained to at least an EMT. So they are out there. But luckily, we have staff that have taken the paramedic class. So even though they're classified as EMTs, we might be able to move one of them into that paramedic opening and then hire an EMT to replace them, kind of thing. So just by moving some people around. But yeah, there is a plan to go to minimum staffing. We have minimum staffing now. We have a policy that if we go below a certain amount, then one of the people getting off shift cannot leave. excuse me, which creates an overtime problem sometimes. The issue with our part-timers is that most of our, if not all, most of our part-timers are working full-time for another agency. So I've already had them scheduled, whether they call me and say, hey, I can't come in today because I'm on mandatory holdover at my primary department. So can we, do we have a plan to eliminate part-time and move that money over? Yes, we had that discussion last year in the budget sessions. I cannot do it with adding 3 people, but I could do, so the plan was to try to get these 3 people, and then next year or the year after, try to get, depending on that station. Once that other station opens up and we add all those people, there'll be no need for part-time, because we will just go to minimum staffing policies. And at that point, we will probably be able to go down 1, possibly even 2, before we even had to, depending on, I mean, the county doesn't like to do it either, but every once in a while, they got to take a truck off the road for the day because they're just that short-staffed. And nobody likes to do that, but there are ways to work those things out, even with mutual aid. So I say it's mission critical for these 3 people now because we are getting a lot of extra calls and our call volume is increasing. What I'm saying that was better this year is our overlapping. Our total call volume went up over 200 calls. It's just that our overlapping went down a little bit, which made our response times better. But that we're still answering 200 more calls than we did last year. So that's not going away. That's going to increase. And we're in 2022 right now. I don't even have those numbers. So I can't, the reason that the response times went down is because the overlapping went down, but the total call volume rose. But that overlapping calls goes in tune. They are one and the same. They go together. If your overlapping goes up, your response times go down. If your overlapping goes down, your response times are better. That is something we cannot predict because we just don't know who's going to call 911 and when. We can only go with the trends, and the trends have been consistent except for this year. The trend has been 15%, 17%, 18%, 19%. And then our call volume has been 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Now, this year, the 1 year it went down, the overlapping, so that caused our response time to be a little bit better. But that's 1 year out of 5. So, do we go with the 4 years or do we go with the 1? Because the trend seems to be that it's going in the other direction.
I want to say something that doesn't have anything to do with the numbers or anything, but I heard the statement, make do. Chris, if you lost 5, 6, 7 people a day, could you make do?
With the help of outside agencies.
Okay. And the other thing is that quality of service. If I'm having a heart attack, okay, I want you to have the personnel, so you have to juggle people around to get to me. So I think that's something that quality of service is one of the things you can't put a dollar sign on. I don't know how
Well, you can't, and that's the point I'm trying. I'll make do with whatever the council decides, but that's what I was saying earlier. You're asking if I would stand up in front of the public and explain why I want these things. Absolutely. Will you stand up in front of the public and tell them why their service is subpar or average instead of above average? That's up to you. I will do whatever you vote on and tell me to do. That doesn't mean it's the best thing to do.
I'm good.
Have we at least got an approach to the fire chief's budget?
I think so. I'm just worried about our time allotments here. We still have 2 others, and I am time limited at the back end, so.
So is
we all are.
Mark. I think we all are.
Chris, we have other things going on today. We had planned to be here till 12. We've already started juggling things just sitting here.
Chief, thank you.
Chief, I thank you very much, sir, for putting up with us.
Thank you all.
Can we defer Parks and Rec?
Yeah, we've already discussed that.
Heather, I'm sorry that you've had to sit here this morning. This is a big budget, and Chief, thank you for your cooperation. No, can we get?
Stay safe, keep us safe.
I enjoyed the guinea pig once more.
Could you give us the miles and the hours on the rolling
Yeah,
stock?
we have that. It
Okay,
just didn't make
we
the
just
sheet.
need to fill it in.
Rose is printing it right this minute.
Okay,
If you look
wow.
at the other ones, they're on there, just wasn't on there.
Thank you, everybody.
But we
you
need,
very
we need
much.
to, I think Lisa wants to recess these instead of calling.
Yeah, if you could recess instead of adjourning, then we don't have to do additional special meeting notices. All the budget workshops are on the calendar already. I'll make sure they're on the agendas page as well.
Do we
so
need a
everybody
motion to
sees.
Is the
recess?
801 not presenting today either?
She had to go.
Motion to recess?
I understand.
Do I have a motion to recess of budget hearings?
Point of discussion, Madam Mayor, since we're backlogged, I'm just wondering whether we should start earlier on our next meeting, so we catch up to the schedule.
We're good. 9 o'clock's good for us. 8 o'clock.
Because the next one's schedule's a big one. It's got water, wastewater.
Yeah, we'll shuffle around.
Let's do earlier.
9 o'clock versus 10, is that
Mark, you
a
okay?
problem, Mark?
He's checking.
Yeah, I think I could make that work.
That's Wednesday, correct?
So the
Wednesday and
motion,
Friday of next week.
the motion to recess would be until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, April 20th.
Mark, is it better for your schedule if we make it 9:30? I just think we'll make up,
Irrelevant.
okay?
All right, so, may I have a motion to recess budgets, hearings to 9 a.m. Wednesday, April 20th?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. And we will, do I need a motion to adjourn?
No, that was your motion.
Recess.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank David and David.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Very much appreciate everything you've put together for us.
Are you collecting the books?
Was today slow because today was